G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting.
Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon, Ian. How are you guys going today?
Good afternoon, Jono. Very formal.
Well, thanks for organising a podcast in the middle of the day. Don't tell my boss.
Yeah, keep that very quiet on the clock. I guess the reason for the afternoon is because we're having a podcast with Louis Brown today. So Louis is actually based in Alberta, Canada, and I think what's the time difference, Louis? 16 hours, I think, between.
Yeah, it's 10 after 8 right now. So.
On Tuesday evening, correct?
Tuesday evening, yeah.
Correct. So it's Wednesday afternoon here and Tuesday evening in Canada, to give you some sort of ideas of the time difference. So it's been a bit of a logistical nightmare, but we got there. So just quick, Mark, how's your week been?
Pretty dull, to be honest. I have to. As you guys know, I'm extended stay-at-home dad at the moment, and there's no deer in my backyard, so there's not much happening for me in that front. I am going to the range tomorrow, Thursday. I'm going to the range. That's my one out, but I have to do it in between school hours, so not much happening for me, unfortunately. All a bit boring.
Yeah, and yourself?
Yeah, I think we touched on it last session anyway. We've just come back from Nundle again, so I won't cover that in any more detail. There's a video that we chucked out a couple of days ago that people are pretty happy with, so we get a lot of comments and questions and things on that, which is great. But for me, I'm in planning now for our next trip, which is in a week and a half, really, now. Where John and I are going to head into some private land country down in New South Wales, Glen Innes area, and we're going to take a couple of newer hunters with us. So we're going to pair up with them, disappear into different directions, and just give them a bit of guidance and support as we. Well, for one fella in particular, he's come out a number of times. We've managed to put him down in front of deer. He's been in good positions to take a few, and it's a mystery to me why they didn't fall over when he pulled the trigger. But this will be attempt number 4 or 5. But I'm more than comfortable that we're going to put him in the right spot. So it's going to be a great opportunity for us to teach him how it goes, and vice versa for you, Jono. So it's going to be a fun 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's going to be cold.
-5. Oh, let's not talk about cold. We got old mate over there. He's just going to call us a pack of wusses. But I guess it's all relevant. It's going to be cold for us. There's no doubt. That story that came out the other day, -8 out of Nundle. It's going to be sort of -4, -5 where we're heading in the morning. So it'll be enough to make me take the electric blanket.
Yeah, mate, I'm cold now.
In Brisbane on the
That's
coast.
Right. At midday, so I'm cold now. So you're going to be really cold.
Yeah, I guess
that's all right.
Speaking of the cold, I know, Louis, when I visited you in Alberta a few years ago, I think it was -17, I think, the one day. And me being the tourist decided to walk around downtown Calgary, having a look at all the buildings and wondering why there was no one on the streets when there's actually, what is it? Is it the +14, I think they call it?
Yeah, the plus 15.
Plus 15.
You can walk around
so they've actually
indoors.
They got an indoor walkway that's, I think, is it 15 feet off the ground, and it links basically all the buildings in the CBD, and everyone walks around in there in nice warmth, and I'm at -17 degrees, freezing my nuts off, wondering why no one's around.
Wondering why it's deserted. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a real quick question out straight away. My wife and I are sitting down watching TV, and you're often watching shows that are coming out of the US. And they're in the snow and they're just wandering around like normal, happy people, but in the snow, but in the same clothes. Like they're still wearing jeans and, a pair of boots and, maybe a T-shirt with a flannel over the top. What's the deal? Like, does it get to a certain point in cold and it's just, you just don't notice anymore? Is it acclimatization, or do your jeans have fuzzy inliners or something?
Yeah, no, you acclimatized. The other thing is the houses here are really warm. So I brought my wife down to Australia in June, and she thought she was going on a tropical vacation, and she's the coldest she's ever been in her life because the houses are chilly. In here, everything is houses are pretty consistently sealed and 21 or 22 degrees, and then you get pretty acclimatized. And the first cold snap in the fall, you usually feel it a lot more, but then unless you're out for a long time, just wear normal clothes.
Yeah, so I'm referring to the average punter walking down the street out in that sort of cold. They just don't seem to be any more rugged up a lot of the time than maybe what we would be. I don't know, just found it fascinating. Maybe it's just movie magic.
It might be, yeah. Who knows? And -5 doesn't feel that cold when you get -30 or -20 on a consistent basis. That -5, you don't bother wearing gloves or a hat. You just go out with a coat on.
Well, I think next weekend we're going to be pretty rugged up with gloves and thermals and everything. So yeah, you can call us a wuss, Link. I think we've earned that. I remember.
Good. I was trying to figure out why I lost weight over the last November, and I was counting them up, and I think I did 14 or 15 dawn till dusk all day sits in a tree stand in -10 to -15. So burning a lot of calories trying to stay still in that temperature for days on end.
Unreal.
That's the coldest I've ever been, is set up in a tree stand, and this was in England. It was about -3 or 4, and I had the wind coming up and hitting me, and I was right in the tree stand at the top of the hill, and that is the coldest I've ever been. I shot 2 fallow, and I couldn't wait to gut them to get my hands nice and warm inside the carcass. And I actually took a photo of the fallow lying on the ground. You can see the steam coming out of the exit wound, and the photo is so blurry from me shaking so much. That is the coldest I've ever been. It was
You're
unreal.
about small enough to crawl into a fellow carcass, I would have thought, Johnny.
Or at least drag it over him.
Liners, yeah.
I was in York. That's the coldest I've ever been. This is 97 when I was over there backpacking, and we were going to York, and we were driving along, and they blocked the road for wind. The trucks were getting literally blown over, and we went, oh yeah, right over, whatever. And because it's like windy, but there's no snow or anything. It's just like you're looking outside the car, and when you got outside the car, you just went, holy, what is this? This is not real, There's just photos of just 3 of us just standing with one guy in the car taking it through the glass, and we're just freezing because the wind was just the wind chill was it's just like you didn't have clothes on.
Yeah, my coldest was Czech Republic, middle of winter. My wife thought it would be a romantic idea to go for a horse ride in the snow. It's cold enough that your nose starts to dribble, and then that freezes on your face. So we coined the term snotsicles pretty quickly, and it was different. Anyway, we rode horses in the snow. It's good.
I think being on a horse is possibly the coldest up in northern BC. Deep cold and snow when you're packing horses and you can't really move that much. And you're wet and don't have. Once you get wet and then you're sitting there in the wind on a horse, I can feel you on that one.
Everyone should have a turn. Sounds good to me.
That's it.
So I guess that leads us into, Louis, a bit of a backstory about how we met. So we've been friends, I actually counted the other day, 15 years now, would you believe? Yeah, so I met Louis in the UK. We both attended the Deer Stalking Certificate Level 1 course that I know we've spoken about that course a few times on different podcasts. But for those of you who haven't heard the full story, if you go back to episode 12 of this podcast, it's actually titled Jono's Obsession with Rocks. You can all hear about that course, about the first trip to Australia, because my first time to Australia was actually with Louis. We traveled over together. Louis took me hunting for the first time in Australia. I saw and hunted my first ever goats with Louis in Australia. So I owe a lot to Louis. I've also been to Canada, as I mentioned. I stayed with Louis in Calgary. He took me out to explore the region, and also organised for one of his mates. I think it was Kevin. Was it Kevin?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kevin took me up into the Rockies. We went chasing elk. I wasn't hunting, just because I didn't have a tag or anything like that. But he took me out for the day, and we went looking. We didn't see elk. We saw some elk sign. Well, we saw some whitetail, I think, but we didn't have a tag for whitetail, if I remember correctly. Or there might have been muleys, one of the other way.
Muleys, probably, yeah.
Yeah, muleys. But what an experience. I mean, what a place. You are very, very fortunate to have, that countryside or that terrain and that the availability of species on your doorstep. Certainly very jealous of the hunting that you've got. But I guess the other thing I wanted to say, and speaking about that episode 12, my obsession with rocks, I was thinking about this and I was looking through some photos. I don't know if you saw the photos I shared with you earlier about that trip that we did for goats. And I actually think my obsession with rocks comes from you, because my first hunting experience in Australia was chasing goats on your family property near Mudgee. And it's quite rocky up at the top, and we were hunting goats amongst the rocks. And I don't know if you remember, you actually took that one billy inside the cave.
I remember that. Yeah.
And
cool.
Right on dark.
Yeah, right on dark. And we heard these goats, and we followed them up, and we went up right on the edge of this rocky ridge. And there was one inside the cave, and Louis shot it inside the cave. And I actually think that's where it's come from, because the first goat hunting I ever did was amongst the rocks, and now I always go to the rocks looking for goats. So I actually can thank you for that.
There you go. You know where to find them. Yeah, the first thing I noticed looking at those pictures is how much younger we both looked.
Well, that was 15 years ago. So
I guess,
So shows how old we are now, I guess. But I guess that's kind of leads us into, obviously you started hunting in Australia. Obviously you're Australian. How did it all begin for you?
So maybe, I don't know if this is common or uncommon, but I didn't come from a particularly hunting-focused family. When I was a kid, I just loved my first passion was actually fishing. I was just obsessed with fishing. I used to watch the Rex Hunt fishing show, and I would go in all the competitions. And I remember when I got my picture in a fishing magazine when I was 12 or something, it was the best day of my life. And I had a real interest in fishing, and then I got into nature photography and just loved being in the bush. I was exposed to pest control shooting through family, had rural properties, and did a little bit of goat culling and some other shooting. But it wasn't really until I was 17 I got my first rifle, and then started doing a little bit of hunting for myself, and really found scratched an itch that I think I was born a hunter all along, but hadn't really figured out what it was that I was searching for until I found hunting. And so, once I had that rifle, I started to think a little more carefully about how I hunted, and learned to be a little more deliberative, I guess, in how I hunted. And it wasn't just out for numbers, and started to learn about taking the meat. And still very much, I was the only one in my family who thought about hunting as opposed to just shooting or pest control. And then really a pivotal point was I got connected with, so I used to go to Hunter Mick-Smith's gun shop in Sydney there, and made some good friends. I think just by hanging out there long enough, I'd go and just chat with them and talk about rifles and where they were going hunting. And around my 21st birthday, a couple of the guys there took me out, and we shot a fallow deer on a property near Goulburn. And that was just a turning point for me. I'd always dreamed of hunting deer, and then so I joined the ADA, the Deer Association, and suddenly started meeting some people who thought about hunting in a very different way, and really thought about hunting as a deeper pursuit than just shooting. So I went down. I think the first club hunt was down in Moroka Junction with the Sydney branch of the ADA, and we went on a sandbar hunt, and suddenly met this whole community of people who were really dedicated, passionate hunters, and were careful about how they hunted, and didn't measure success necessarily on shots fired or bodies stacked up, and had a deeper appreciation. And of course, hunting sandbar deer was a whole new level of commitment and challenge. And I mean, I haven't hunted in Australia for a long time, but my understanding is that the sandbar population has increased quite a lot since then. That was back in 2004. It was down there, and the deer population was pretty thin. So yeah, I ended up taking a young sambar buck, sambar stag, I should say, right around the time I think I was around 21 at the time, on that club hunt. I managed to stay on. Pretty much everyone had gone home, and I stayed on and really put my mind to where the deer would be, having had some pressure over the week, and pushed into an area that hadn't really been pressured, and just had this incredibly deep experience, one-on-one solo hunting by myself. Just one of those perfect Victorian high country mornings, and had the sun rising up behind me, and it got up high on a ridge, and this stag came up the valley below me. And I can pull it right back. I still get goosebumps thinking about it now. And I had this very poignant moment where I could, because I couldn't see the deer, he was down in the gully below me. I could hear him moving, and I stood up, and I could only just see the top of his antlers and the top of his head, and I didn't want to risk taking an offhand shot at that deer, so ended up moving a little bit, and eventually he broke, and I got a shot at him and killed him. But there was quite a deep moment there where we were both looking at each other, and he hadn't quite figured out what I was, and I had the wind and the sun right. So that was it. I was truly knew what my purpose in life was after that experience.
Cool.
Can't believe. Well, that was your first sambar hunt, you said? So you joined the ADA, you went down to the Maruka area and shot your first sambar deer.
I did, yeah. It was day 6 or so of that first hunt, yeah.
And you say they were thin on the ground back then. Well, there'll be people.
Yeah, no one else killed a deer that.
Now. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even now, you can head down there. We've taken a couple of groups down that way over the last few years, and one or two animals come in. They are certainly there, but it takes some learning to switch your brain, I think, from what we chase up here in Fellows and Reds and go and chase sambar. But
yeah, and I think I'd been I actually miss it, believe it or not, for all the opportunity we have here. I have very, very fond memories of hunting in the high country, and love to get back down there at some stage. Yeah, I mean, I think your reaction's not uncommon. The hunting mentor I mentioned, some of you may know him, Tony Saros, is now at Beretta. Mm-hmm. He had been hunting many years for his first sambar stag, and helped me in so many ways. And then for me to go down and kill one on my first trip was a little bit of a tough pill, I think. But anyway, he was a good sport about it.
Yeah, we actually invited Tony to the hunt camp at Nundle this year.
Oh, that's great.
He wasn't able to make it, but yeah, actually he was off chasing fallow. So it was that. So he said, I can't come because I'm doing the same thing. So he was chasing fallow. Yeah. So.
Excellent. Well, it's a fantastic guy. Yeah.
So with that, I mean, look, as Ian kind of gently alluded to, the fact that you joined ADA, drove down to Victoria, shot a deer, puts you in a pretty select group of people. Like there's a number of people who go down every year and still haven't done that. So that's an achievement in itself. So when you said, you said there'd been pressure, and you thought, where will the deer be? Where's the fact? What was, if you can remember, what was your thinking in that space? What was you thinking? Okay, this is where I should be going today.
It came down to where other people had been, what I'd learned. Had some great mentorship. I think I'm going to try and remember everyone's name, but John Mumford, I remember, was a real support, and some people had just been incredibly generous with showing me everything they knew over that first 4 or 5 days of the trip, and what elevation they would be at, and thinking about aspect and elevation, and food sources, and wind direction. Really getting a pretty good grounding, and I had, I think, a pretty good sense of being in the bush and observation. And even though I hadn't hunted sambar before, I wasn't just a complete city slicker at that stage of my life. But the key thing was it was actually on the other side of the river, and the crossing was pretty challenging. And it was so I decided to cross the river, which I didn't think anyone had done in the last 4 or 5 days. It was
Hang
probably
on.
2 or 3 kilometers from camp.
This is after everyone's left and you're now solo hunting by yourself. You thought you'd ford that river. Smart.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the time to cross the river.
There was some
good
young
clarification,
man blood in those veins at that point in time. Yeah, right.
I didn't say I was smart, but yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to get across the river, and then I wanted to get up high. There was a steep gully that had a big feeding flat at the base of it, and I was able to cross the river and get downwind of that feeding area, and then skirt around and get up the backside of a ridge. And then with the wind, the way the wind, the thermal switched in the morning to be coming up that gully, and where the wind was coming, I knew I'd have the sun rising directly behind me, and the thermals rising up there. So if there was a deer feeding on that, in that big flat, the thick feeding area there was pretty good chance that where the gully pinched out, I'd be able to get a look at him. And sure enough, came together. But I had spent the last few days trumping through the bush and scaring off deer. I'd heard a few crashes and I'd heard a few honks, but realized that I wasn't going to get one just by treating them like goats and wandering around till I saw one and then just shooting it.
Was the whole concept of wind and thermals, or wind probably not, but did you learn about thermal currents whilst you're on that trip? Was that something you had a firm grasp of? Because that's something that many people don't learn for some time. They think the winds at the early morning thermal current can bring you unstuck pretty quick.
Yeah, you bet. I was pretty rookie. I didn't have a solid understanding of it. I had some vague ideas. I was more just following the wind direction I could see. I don't think I had enough of a foresight to know at which point the thermals were going to switch or any of that type of situation. I was just reacting to the wind I was observing. I remember at that time I use a powder puffer now pretty religiously because I mostly bow hunt, but at that time I had a thread hanging off the end of my barrel, taped to the end of my barrel, and just religiously use that as a little wind indicator. Yeah, it worked pretty good.
Yeah, I was doing a competition rifle shoot, and that was actually illegal.
Oh, right.
So what guys used to do was there was one old boy, he had a price tag on his barrel. It'd been there so long it was in pounds, but it was oh no, that's not my window, guys, the price tag, I'm trying to sell it, and it's just this look
hanging down there. Yeah, that's
it.
I've forgotten all about that. I used to hang a thread from my barrel as well years ago, but yeah, I switched to the wind puffer once I could stump up the $14.50 for a little plastic bottle full of powder. So it seemed a bit rough at the time. Anyway, it's all good. It's lasted a long time.
The old lighter was the other one.
Oh yeah, seeing the flame.
Just lighter, and of course I hunted a bit with a guy who used to smoke, so
Well, that was the best way. It wasn't just cigarette smoke.
That's a pretty good idea. Yeah.
Not going
to I like the puffer, or a lot of guys here use like puffy weed seeds, because you can actually follow what the wind's doing at your position is not necessarily what it's doing 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 yards away. So it's nice being able to see that a little more than just right where you're at.
So they're collecting those, sticking in a bag or something?
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Right? I bought one recently, and it's I won't go into the brand because they'll sue me, but it's fragrant. It's annoying as all hell. You can smell it. I go, oh God, if I can smell it, it's anything else can. It's got it's like
minty fresh for hunters.
That's right. It must have been in the factory where they were bottling, the talcum powder, and they were kind of one here. There's two lines of products going same funnel. You can smell it. It's so annoying. Yes. That's a pretty big brand too, and in fact, it's a pretty big brand out of Canada.
There you go.
Narrowing it down.
There you go.
Send to Australia as a joke.
So it smells
Excellent.
very pleasant. Maybe elk like a pleasant, fragrance, and maybe it lulls them in a false sense of security. You spray it up, and they just get all relaxed.
So I guess
moving.
You did some hunting here. We met in the UK, and we obviously met through shooting. How did you get involved in hunting in the UK?
Yeah, so I mean, just thinking of my Australian experience, because it was a bit of a progression. That first Samba trip and a lot of my early trips were more car camping focused, and I really I realized that I wanted to get into backpack hunting because I wanted to be able to extend my range from the car. And I had some pretty horrific nights out on spike camps where I had no equipment at all. I had old my dad's Vietnam era sleeping bag that probably had 10% of the feathers left in it, and just a blue foamy that I'd just lay on the ground and shiver my way through the night listening to the dogs howling. And so I had some trial and error in the early days, but knew I wanted to do some backpack hunting, and got a little bit set up with what I now realize was not very good gear. But I ended up getting a pretty nice Sambar stag down in Lake Eildon on a week-long backpack trip. So that really just cemented in my mind what I wanted to be doing. And then, so it was really a career opportunity that I went to the UK. I was working in Sydney in the financial sector, and I had a brother in the UK, and I went over there and managed to negotiate a career opportunity to go to London. And so I took that up. That was just a good opportunity to go and travel and live in another country and work in another place. But trying to cling on to my hunting connection while I was there. So I had been in touch with, I think I ended up trying to even think how I found them, but I did some cold outreach to a few different people and managed to make a connection for someone who offered to take me out. Stalking, as they call it there, because hunting is chasing foxes behind hounds on horseback. So he was part of the deer stalking society, and so just as my ongoing education, I took the deer stalking certificate, and I'm pretty sure that's where we met, right, Jonathan, at that course.
That's right.
Because I think that opened up. It's vague to me now, but I'm pretty sure that if you had that course, that opened up some other access that you could get into some other hunting opportunities there. If you had deer stalking certificate, that was a sort of baseline qualification that you knew what you were doing. And to their credit, they did a good job, I think, of
very good.
Marksmanship, field dressing, disease identification, a lot of actual practical skills that are, I would say, better than the hunter education course here, for example. So and then in the UK, I think we got out after Sika one time on a cull hunt.
We went chasing Sika and roe. I think we went chasing fallow the one time, fallow in Muntjac.
Right.
Where I was sitting in a half seat and you were sitting in the half seat next to me, and I didn't realize it, but I had a Muntjac deer underneath my half seat, and it was directly below me and I couldn't see it. And Louis was like, he was going to shoot it, but he didn't want to give me the fright of my laugh.
You should have shot it.
And then afterwards he was like, why didn't you shoot it? Why didn't you shoot it? I should shoot what? Because there was one right underneath the half seat. You should have shot it. I didn't want to give you the fright of your laugh. No, we had a couple of opportunities. Yeah, we chased Sika and roe down with David in Dorset.
Right.
Yeah. You were successful in that trip.
And Wiltshire, I had a friend there. We used to. He had roe, muntjac, and fallow in his place as well. So, I mean, very different hunting. And as someone, taking backpacking into Moroka Junction after Sandbar in the Victorian High Country to sitting in a established high seat where you can hear cars driving past, you can hear people chatting in their Sunday afternoon barbecue, and someone comes past walking their dog. It was just with a silenced 270 or a suppressed 270, was just a fascinating contrast in hunting styles. But having said that, it was also great just to learn about the utilization, the game meat system that they have in the UK. You could go down to the farmer's market and there was game meat available, and everything that we shot, we took into the game dealer, and learning about the way that the hunting leases work. The property that I had access to through my friend, where I mostly hunted, was there was a sporting lease, which was the birds, and there was a gamekeeper who shot the foxes and rabbits and things like that, and then there was a stalking lease, and that's what my friend had in conjunction with a small syndicate. And then part of their deal was they had a management plan and they had to shoot a certain number of deer off there each year, but all of the meat then they would sell into the human consumption market, and that would cover the cost of their stalking lease. So just really interesting experience, and great to see how things work in other parts of the world and experience some other species. And that was the first time I'd done any, well, as they call it, high seat hunting. It's more of a sit and wait type of approach. But and then that trip, John, that we did down there with David, that was a lot more walking around stalking. And I remember taking a couple of Sika just off the sticks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, David had, I think, 15,000 acres, so it's a huge property.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't his. He had the stalking lease on that. But yeah, 15,000 acres bordering the military ranges, and so they had deer on there as well. But they used to come onto the property that he had, and was just overrun with Sika, and we had some good hunts on that. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, that was a fun place.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said you went, you decided to go from car hunting to backpack hunting, and then you said you went to English hunting. I thought, well, that backpack would have been got a mouldy and unused after a couple of years.
Yeah, had a hip flask of gin in it.
That's right. That's it. There's not much backpack. There's not much back. I actually saw recently these guys were actually starting to do overnighters in Scotland. Actually, setting up tents and stuff like that, and it was just like, this is kooky. Yeah, it certainly is interesting over there, isn't it? The I think what it is for me anyway was the structure of it all. There's so much overlaying structure in going hunting. So as you said, you've got we went out with colours, and the way that they had to process the meat, the whole lot. There was just this overlay of structure about, and they were culling on what are they called, National Trust land,
right?
So they got National Trust properties that so old old family homes and estates that had gone to the National Trust, so they were keeping the deer numbers down on those, so they were just moving around. And all the meat went straight. I think all the meat went back to in a kind of roundabout way back to the National Trust to for all their canteens and stuff like that.
Fascinating. Yeah. And I mean, the one thing that I really appreciate, as much as the structure could be seen as a detraction, or how contained it was, I really relished in what a strong culture there was around hunting and respect for hunting. And I remember telling a fairly upper class person there, they said, "Oh, what are you doing for the weekend?" I said, "Oh, I'm going deer stalking in Wiltshire." And they said, "Oh, lovely." I was just thinking back to how, I kept it a secret that I was a hunter in Sydney. It was not socially acceptable, and not many of my friends, only my close friends even knew that I hunted for a long time. So I think it was a different approach to that, and there was a respect for it, and maybe a bit more of an understanding of it, because it was so structured, and a long history there of hunting being a worthwhile and noble pursuit.
Well, it's what they call the country sports, isn't it? That's what they
field sports.
Yeah. So you got but they also have the levels of it. So there's that what they call course hunting, then
rough shooting,
course hunting, and stalking's got a funny place in it, because it's kind of it seemed from an outsider that stalking kind of had a bandwidth where it covered both the lower end but also the higher end, depending on where, almost depending on where you were stalking. If you're hunting in Scotland, that was a kind of the big end of town, and if you're in England, it seemed to be a little less
squarely middle class. Yeah,
that's right. It was a bit lesser down the pecking order.
And that was a shock to me as well, just the class system in the UK. I think that was fascinating, how if you were upper class, you shot pheasants, and if you were middle class, you shot deer, and if you were lower class, you rough hunted if you could afford it at all for birds. So very interesting how the correlations there.
Yeah, and if you fished, if you use bait at this level, if you use fly at this level, it's really weird. That it is, because we were in Newark, and there was a guy out the back fishing in the whatever that river is through there, and he was fishing for bait. It was just bait fishing. He was just fishing in a river, and I was just went over and started chatting to him and stuff like that, and you know, I kind of said, do you use lures? And he kind of looked at me really oddly, and he kind of like, I went, okay, sure. He was a bit stunned that I would ask him if he used lures. And I said, I even said, you ever flick fly? I've seen there was a fly shop, and, and he went, oh, no, he didn't say, he just said no, but, what I realised was that he was saying, no, that's a different entry point than what I'm doing.
That's not my people, yeah.
Yeah, well, because
I picked up on the fact that the lower class shoot the pigeons.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
which is the best fun. Look, I tell you something. I know that partridge and all that stuff are exciting. I've shot partridge. Well, I've shot half partridge. Half partridge. Yeah. Well, I shot it, and then a guy backed me up and flew it out of the sky. So it was a half. I've shot pheasant, and I've done driven hunts, and I've done farm shoots or rough shooting, and I actually found rough shooting to be fun. But the most fun was actually behind the blind on pigeons.
Wood pigeons, right?
Yeah. When they come in on the rape seat or whatever it is that you're on, and you're behind the blinds, and you just jump up and the sky is just full of them, and it's kind of like duck hunting in that sense, So I found that was really that was the most fun in a lot of ways.
That's what I would buy from the farmers market because they were pretty affordable, and I thought they were pretty tasty. So
yeah. And that's it. When I did it, they let you, because they were pigeons. They were like, oh, you can take a few, because there was a collection of them, so they said you could take a few, and we just breasted them there. And it was really good eating. They seemed to there was no consistency. So it was because, obviously shooting wild animals, like one pigeon would be really tasty and one not so tasty. Not so tasty.
Well, I went to a restaurant out in Hampshire, I think it was. It was a game restaurant, and they did a starter, a warm pigeon salad with blue cheese. Oh, it was beautiful. Absolutely
that
beautiful.
Sounds spectacular.
Yeah.
I was in Egypt, and the English fella that was with us after we got off the camel tour ordered pigeon from the menu, and it came like a truck had run it over 100 times and peeled off the road. It was about that thin, and it was about that wide, and it was black.
Oh,
that
wow.
was it. It was like a pigeon fried pancake, but off the tar. Anyway, it's disgusting. I couldn't come and eat pigeon. Keep it.
Oh, and I had pigeon, not medallions, but medallion-like, the breasts. And the best, one of the best eating deer I've ever had was English fallow deer. And that, wild shot English fallow deer, because it's just, it was just so fat and silky and, well fed. Wasn't a bush thing that had been living up in the scrub, eating in sticks and hardly getting a drink. It was just, fat little pig-like creature. It was fantastic eating.
There you go.
Yeah, they were good.
Let's move out of the UK, Johnny.
Yeah, so I guess that leads us into, Louis, how did you end up in Canada?
So long story short, the global financial crisis. We were there together in 2008. I was working in the financial sector. That was some rough times there. Very interesting from a career perspective, but I basically decided that there wasn't going to be a fun place for me to be in the next few years, and there were some other issues around the UK changed some of the immigration rules that meant I was going to have to leave and come back in order to get on the correct designation of thing, and I just said, look, I'm 20. I was 25 years old at the time. I'd always dreamed of coming to Canada. I'd never been here, but as a skier and a hunter and an outdoorsman, I just felt that I had to come and experience life in the Rocky Mountains. So I thought, well, why don't I go and do a working holiday in Canada? And I started looking into it, and the immigration requirements were pretty simple, and I could get a 2-year working holiday visa that allowed me to do any job. And I could get it from the UK. I was assuming I'd have to go back to Australia and regroup, but I ended up just buying a one-way ticket from London. I quit my job, and I broke up with my girlfriend, and I sold all my stuff, and I sent a package, sea freight, back to Australia with some of my things, and set off for Canada to places unknown, and it was fantastic. I just came out here, started in a mountain town that, as it turns out, is pretty renowned for Australian people working there, which I didn't realize at the time. I thought I was on this.
What was the town, mate?
The town's Banff, which is in the Rockies, just west of Calgary here, and it's a bit of a ski town and a bit of a tourist town. And for that purpose, it was great because it was well set up. There was lots of pretty simple jobs, and there was a young community there, and it was a fun place to be while I found my feet. And I put my mind right away to trying to get involved in the outfitting industry. I felt like that was the best opportunity for me to really experience some wild places and some good adventures would be to work as a guide or an assistant guide with an outfitter. So it didn't take me long to get hooked up with a guy who ran a trail riding outfit in the summer, and then was actually a pretty renowned sheep hunting guide, or sheep hunting outfitter, I should say. And he gave me a chance, which was a pretty interesting experience. I remember I showed up there, and he didn't say anything about a job interview or anything. He said, well, pretty quietly, pretty short-spoken guy, and said, well, why don't you come down here and we'll have a chat? So I had to rent a car. I didn't have a vehicle at that point, and was in Banff, and I asked him if there was a way that I could get there on a bus, and he basically said, no, just get yourself here. So I went down there at 8 o'clock in the morning, said, come have a coffee. So I went there and just didn't know what I was in for. So we had a bit of a coffee, and he asked what I'd been up to and what I'd done and what I wanted to do. And then he said, well, why don't we go have a look at some horses? So I had brought no food. Hadn't brought any gear or clothes, just the clothes I was wearing. And he took me to where they wintered the horses, which was about an hour's drive away, in his truck. And then turns out that the entire day's work was trimming the horses' feet and checking on them and turning them all back out again. So he got a good 9 hours work out of me that day. And I learned a little bit about dealing with horses. I hadn't really done much with, or anything really at all, other than riding a few horses at Uncle's farm when I was a kid. So that was my trial by fire with that, and ended up signing on with him and running tourist trail rides for most of the summer. But the good thing is I was living in the mountains and spending every day out in the bush, and I would work 6 days and then go hiking and scouting on the 7th day. And so it was just a pretty idyllic lifestyle for a young and free 25-year-old. And I really started to get a sense for what was here and learn about the area and the landscape and the wildlife that was here. And I had some great help. And because I was specifically there to stay on at the end of the season with as a hunting guide, I got to be on the pack trips. So I'd take people up just for tourist trips, really. So we'd pack up horses and take them back up into the mountains for a few days, and I got to be involved in packing up the camp that we took up into the backcountry. And so yeah, it was fantastic. And then when the time for the summer tourist season winds down, and the hunting season is primarily in the fall here, I sat down with my boss there and just kind of said, okay, so how's this going to work? And said, well, you got your first hunter coming here, and it's he's hunting elk and for 10 days, and you're his guide, and that's it. So trial by fire a little bit.
How many elk had you seen in the summer?
I'd seen a lot, never killed one.
No, but you knew where they were.
Or called one. So then I was still trying to, the ranch was still busy with trying to work horses, and I'd race off in the evenings trying to scout elk. And like I say, I would jump in my truck, try and get out early, and jump in my truck and drive down the highway and climb a mountain and glass for elk until dark, and then race back to be working again in the morning. So it was a busy time, but just fantastic. And I found a couple of pretty nice bulls, and I think that impressed him enough to say, okay, well, you're on. so yeah, that was the start of my my guiding experience. Ended up not killing a bull with that hunter. The bull that I'd scouted, someone else killed on the day after opening when we were in a different spot. So that was a little disappointing. And it's what I didn't realize at the time, that the hunting in this area, this is, you come into a place with rose tinted lenses like this is incredible. But what I didn't realize at the time is that the elk population was at the beginning of its really steep decline at that point. And that area now is almost completely devoid of elk. The recruitment rates are devastatingly low due to habitat change and predation. So neither I nor the very experienced guide, who was a son of the outfitter, got a elk on with those first two hunters. But we rolled straight into hunting bighorn sheep, and had a pretty formative experience in finding a pretty nice bighorn ram that we killed for our client, a Canadian hunter client, later that season, and then rolled into hunting whitetails. So yeah, my first season was just a really great experience, and I don't think I could possibly have learned as much and as fast as just diving in, fully committing like that, and living in the mountains and working every day with some really, really experienced sheep guides, and they were, I don't know if hard on me is the right terminology, but they had high expectations, and I think I lent into that, and really, really learned how to judge elk and sheep, and read the mountains and pick out sheep, and how to glass, and spent my meager wages on optics. And, that was had a little truck and my optics, between my rifle scope, my spotting scope, and my binoculars, by the end of that year, were worth at least 2x my truck. So
wow.
that's how I lived.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the start of it. And to be perfectly honest, I intended when I went there from England to just go for a year and get some experience. And by the time I had done my first season, I came back to Australia to help out with harvest on the farm, and realized I've got to go back. That's where I want to live my life. And here I am 14 years later, I guess. So I built a life here, and I'm a Canadian citizen, and married my wife here, and have a very hunting and outdoor centric lifestyle in all 4 seasons now. And I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. And I mean, we can go into some more around different guiding and hunting trips we've done there, but that's the journey that got me here.
Okay. So what's the difference between a guide and an outfitter?
That's a good question. So an outfitter is the business owner who has the license to have the tags or the allocation. So each province, this is one thing that was surprising to me, I didn't fully understand, is Canadian regulations are very distinct by province. In fact, not just in hunting, in many things, it's very much a federation of provinces. Not to get into politics, but there's a lot of differences between the provinces, and there's a lot of identity around provinces, a lot of regulation that's based on provinces. So in Alberta, where I live, the outfitters are allocated a certain number of tags. So the whole province is broken up into wildlife management units, and then licensed outfitters can are eligible to purchase tags. And there's a secondary market in tags, or licenses, I guess, more technically. So you may have 3 elk tags in 408, for example. Let's just pull some random example. That, as an outfitter, allows you to sell 3 elk hunts each year in that zone. And the non-resident hunters would still have to purchase their individual license, but that's your outfitter tags. And then a guide is someone who works for an outfitter who's licensed through the Professional Outfitting Association, and that they're the one that actually is with the hunter. So an outfitter can stay in camp and run operations and run a team of guides. And if he has 50 tags, or some of those big bear outfitters run a lot of guides, or whitetail outfitters, or you could basically be a sole guide outfitter and do it all yourself. And then each province is quite different. So in the Yukon, it's more of an allocation. In BC, it's also more of an allocation. So you have in BC and the Yukon, the whole province is divided up into guide outfitter areas. And so Whereas in Alberta, you might have 3 different outfitters who have tags in the same wildlife management unit because of the way the tags have been distributed over the years. In BC and the Yukon, each area has one exclusive guide outfitter, and when you buy or sell that outfitter area, then you get the allocation associated with that area. And I mean, the government can take that allocation away or change it. So we've seen with grizzly bear hunting, there was a backbone of some of those outfits just got pulled out from under them with no compensation. So it's a little more in BC and the Yukon, it's a little more the area. But again, there's that distinction between an outfitter is the business owner who's licensed to have the area, and the guide is the person who's licensed to actually go with the hunter.
Okay. And how does that apply to someone who? So can you hunt privately on? So what, is there public land, and could I just hunt? Can I get a tag, or do I need to go through an outfitter?
So it's complicated. That's the one thing.
It's probably good for people to know if they're thinking about it. So yeah,
it's a really important distinction, and so as I mentioned, we're very broken up by province, and the provincial regulations vary a lot. And the key distinguishing feature is residency, and that's not just Canadian residency; that's provincial residency. So, as an Alberta resident, I can't hunt in the Yukon, I can't hunt in BC, and I can't hunt in Saskatchewan, barring some specific circumstances, which usually means having a resident of one of those places use a very small allocation of opportunity to act as a hunter host. So using the Alberta example, if one of you guys wanted to come over and hunt with me, there are some species that we would be able to apply ahead of time for a hunter host tag, and then I could act as a quasi guide for you, where you can only hunt with me. I can't accept any payment for that service, and only once every 3 years can I get that opportunity to host someone, and then you could purchase non-resident tags with me hosting you in that way. Otherwise, as a non-resident, even if you're from BC, you would have to purchase a outfitter tag, a non-resident tag through an outfitter. And so if I want to hunt in the Yukon, I have to. It's the same as if I was American or Australian or German, and pay the 20, 40, 60,000 US dollars to go on a hunt up there.
So you'd either have to know someone who's a resident who could, as you said, if there was the opportunity to do a hosted hunt, or you would have to go through an outfitter.
That's correct. Yeah, and those hosted hunts. So in the Yukon, for example, there's now a draw for residents to be able to become a hunter host, so that it's not even that you can do it every year.
So even then, there's no guarantee that if you go with a resident, you'll get the tags because it's a ballot.
Well, yeah, ahead of time, he or she may not get that draw to be able to host you, and then you can't go until
they don't. Okay.
How long before the season is the draw? I mean, I'm just thinking about the planning. You got someone in. I'm coming to Canada. You're going to host me. At what point in time does the trip get pulled? Like how, because people.
So in Alberta, it's a little more predictable. So if you were hunting, say, elk or whitetail or mule deer, those are what we call over the counter tags. That can be quite predictable, and I think you have to have it all organized by July or August for the, say you're hunting whitetail in November. But yeah, it's not a huge amount of time window. So if you're going to go that route, you have to be fairly nimble. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for international hunters, it is a challenging place to come. And I think to some extent, the flip side of that is that the wildlife is a public resource, and it's viewed as a public resource in line with the North American wildlife model. And the hunters pay through our tags. My tag bill, my license bill each year is usually $400 or so, and the entire conservation system, the conservation service, the biologists, is all funded by hunters. And then the wildlife, regardless of whether it's on public or private land, is all treated as a public resource. So if you own land, you still need tags to shoot deer. It's not just that the deer's on my land, therefore it's mine. The deer are a public resource. So, I think there are some fantastic things about the way that system is run, and it allows the biologists to be quite careful about how they allocate tags, and they do actually put a lot of thought into the allocation of tags. And when there's more hunter pressure than there is available resource, they limit them either through a draw or reducing the number of tags, or there's various mechanisms, or putting a size or an age limit on what you can take. So, I think it's actually a pretty well run system, but the big limitation is who can actually hunt here.
And are those tag quotas done annually? Sorry, Ian.
Sorry, quotas are reviewed annually, although they may not do aerial surveys every year, for example, and they base a lot on hunter returns. So you have to do a harvest survey, and they have a pretty good idea over the years of what the statistical probability of, if they issue 100 tags, this 60 animals are going to get killed, or whatever the number is.
Yeah. So if you're hosting a family member or a friend every 3 years or so, what is a non-resident tag worth to someone? I'm just thinking about costs. You're getting over on your plane. I'm lucky enough to know somebody who can get me out there. What am I going to pay for a tag for an elk or a whitetail?
Pretty affordable, actually. I think they're only they'd be in the 100. I think they're $300 to $500, something like that.
Whereas if I'm gonna choose an outfitter, I'm in the thousands and thousands of dollars for that experience.
Yeah. No, I think a mountain elk hunt would be in the $10,000 range.
Amazing. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into that. I completely understand that. There must be, you might not be able to answer this, there must be a hell of a bloody grey market trade-off. I'll resident you resident me, thing going on back there somewhere.
There might be, but I honestly think the hunting community it's relationships like this, and I'd extend the invite if you want to come over here. Very happy to host you, and I think that because it's so tight on having to have someone that and that person has to put their name out there. I don't know if there's really that much of a paid grey market, because you can only do it every 3 years. It's I think generally it's actually pretty good. I think there is some gaming that goes on with people putting their grandma and their wife and their girlfriend and their three kids on the drawers to try and increase their odds, and then it was my tag. But but I think on the non-resident side, it's it's relatively tough to game, and if one or two people are gaming it, then I don't think that's one of our biggest problems that we're facing in the wildlife management here.
So when you see a guy going out with someone else and he's got the baby in the papoose. No, the kid's in the papoose. The kid's actually got the tag. I'm just carrying him. I'm just helping out here. So,
he's going to pull the trigger.
And he's hunting. I'm just supervising. He's the host.
That's right. Yeah.
the guy with the bottle's the host. He's the hunter.
There must be, are there reciprocal rights around the licensing? You have to get an international weapons license or a local weapons license to be able to shoot?
That's a really good question. So when I came here, I imported my rifles from Australia. 99% of the paperwork was getting them out of Australia, which blew their mind that they weren't coming back. And it was a gong show. And when I got to Vancouver International Airport, my wife said, "If you get hung up, I'm leaving you. You go. I'm going ahead." And so you check that, looking at the form, it's like, you got knives, firearms. Like, yep, got firearms. And I came up went and collected my oversized baggage, which is a double rifle case, and went up there, and they said, "What do you got in the case?" I said, "I got some firearms." And they said, "What are they?" I said, "Oh, they're just bolt-action hunting rifles." He said, "Have you got a firearms license?" I said, "Yeah." And I showed it to him, and he said, "Right, that sounds good." Never even opened the case, and no paperwork and anything. So I think
on the flip side of that in Australia, man, they're like, "There's guns at the airport! Quick, get this guy out of here!"
Yeah, well, I think that worked in our favour. I think that worked in our favour. We were such a risk. They said, "Get these guys out of here now."
They don't check the muddy boots or anything. They just
That's
get
right.
these guys.
Just push them out. Get them out. Okay.
Oh yeah, trying to convince trying to convince the New South Wales Firearms Registry that I wasn't bringing them back, and they're gone from that.
Sure.
Oh yeah,
That was that blew their
that's
mind.
it.
That was it.
How do they mark that on their register? Yeah, these no
Yeah,
longer
yeah.
exist.
Yeah, strike them from your register. They're ghost guns now. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I don't know the answer to that question, Ian. It is a good one, and because I've been in it and I got my own resident firearms license, I'm not entirely sure what the requirements are if you're visiting. But I think if you have an international firearms license, you should be good. But don't quote me on that.
I don't even know if an international firearms license is a thing. I was just
I didn't know that
you
either.
get a car license,
if you have an Australian firearms license, so I think that would be probably sufficient
for a visitor. Yeah. I know if you go to New Zealand, you've got to get a temporary New Zealand firearms license.
Right. Yeah. I remember
I'm
going
sure it's
through
just
that,
a piece of paper that needs to be done to satisfy it. Normally, an outfitter would sort that out for you.
Exactly, and that is the benefit of going through an outfitter, is they're very versed in all of those type of logistics, so they'd be able to help you out.
No, benefit, thousands, tens of thousands benefit.
Right.
I'm back to, hey, when's your next 3 years coming in, buddy?
But that's why when I hunt England, I don't take anything.
Yeah.
I just,
well, most of the states,
and that's
rifles.
honestly a much better option.
Easy.
Is borrow something when you're here, and that's what I did when I went to New Zealand, because the effort of trying to get it in and out, and we ended up having to transit through the US, and if that's just a whole nightmare. So if you can borrow it when you're there, I know it's not your pet rifle, but it's sometimes a good way to go.
Oh, for sure.
But you're not really hunting with rifles these days, are you?
Yeah, primarily I'm a bow hunter these days. Yeah, I made that transition. Well, I started to make that transition. Got to think now. 5 or 6 years ago, I think, maybe more than that now. Yeah. Anyway, so one of the things about the way the regulations work here is and thanks to our bow hunting association in Alberta, there's fantastically more opportunity for bow hunting than there is for rifle hunting. So our season starts. So if you're we'll take whitetail deer for example. If whitetail deer is your focus and your passion, general rifle season, and it depends by zone, but is usually November 1st to November 30th. So you've got a month to hunt. And that goes for mostly elk and moose on draw, and most big game ungulate rifle hunting is the month of November. Bow season opens between August 25th and September 1st and goes right through. So for me, the opportunity to hunt prairie mule deer in the Badlands, bull elk during the rut, bears early season whitetail, all of that is available as a bow hunter with much less requirement to draw tags. And so last year I pulled my first moose tag, and I had 10 years of priority that I'd built up. But that was the fourth moose I'd killed, because the others I'd been able to get on a bow hunting tag. And I killed that killed that bull with a bow again, because that was the goal that I set for myself, and I shot him off the ground. But all of the moose I'd got prior to that were just on general tags, and that's through the opportunity through bow hunting. And I think I came to it a little bit based on opportunity, because you get so much more hunting season. But I really found that the level of knowledge that I built as a hunter through bow hunting, I think I would probably say I learned more in my first year of bow hunting than I had in the 15 years of hunting prior to that, just because it's such a closer range game, and it's so much more of a patience game, waiting for the right opportunity. And generally, you can see by the time you've seen a deer or your target animal with a rifle, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to kill it. With a bow and arrow, once you've seen that animal, depending on what your setup is, of course, if you're spot and stalk mule deer hunting, for example, that's just where the actual hunting starts. Up until that point, you're just really looking to find a starting point. But so I really love the bow hunting. I just feel like it's such a deeper and much more personal and engaged form of hunting, and it's it's quiet. I love that. I love that quite often the animals don't even know what's happened. I mean, that moose we were just in the pre-call there. You had some pictures there of that moose that I had all broken down, and in my backpack there, I was sitting up in a tree when that one came through. It's on a general archery area not far from my house here, and I shot him at about 40 yards, and he jumped because he heard the shot, and I got a really good double lung and took the top of his heart out, and he ran probably 30 yards, and then he actually stopped and turned around to look where he was standing when he got shot, and was trying to figure out what the noise was that he'd heard, and then just got a little weak in the knees and rolled over. So when it works well and when it's right, it's just a really calm and fantastic way to hunt. It's just yeah. So I've got a real passion for it. I love the bow hunting. On the opportunity side, on the just the mode of hunting, you know, and I've started to get into a few different avenues of that. I was out last year. I did a 9-day solo mountain backpack hunt for alpine mule deer into an area that didn't think there was going to be much chance of finding deer, and it was pretty overlooked. It's an area where a lot of people go to hunt sheep, but the sheep hunting has got very crowded, and there's a lot of pressure around opening day. So I went up in there, and no one was looking for mule deer, and I got into an area where I was just really by myself for almost that entire time. And I got down to the point over that course of that week where I knew a handful of bucks by name that I'd given them over the week, and I started to figure out their behavior. I had a missed opportunity at 20 yards on one buck on one day, and then watched how he was able to change his behavior over the next 5 or 6 days, and totally changed his pattern when embedded in deep cover. Just the way he changed his behavior and how he used the terrain was incredible to watch. And if I had been rifle hunting, I would have just laid down and shot that deer the first day, and I would never have had that level of experience. And then the buck that I actually went after, again, I spotted him at probably 11 in the morning, had eyes on him for 3 or 4 hours. I actually had a nap waiting for him to change position a little bit, and he ended up bedding in a spot that was going to work for me, and waited till the thermals had really set in. He was on this sunny slope that was alpine sunny slope right at tree line. And if you can imagine, very stereotypical Rocky Mountains picture where there's just dotted spruce trees in a grassy alpine slope. And so I took a huge walk around, and then spent a couple of hours sneaking down in on him, and then waited, I think, 3 hours at 40 yards from him until he stood up and started grazing in the evening. I mean, unfortunately, didn't make a great shot. I misjudged the range and never got that deer. So that is the flip side, I guess, of bow hunting. But I think the experience that you have, you know, again, I would have just laid down and shot that deer within 5 minutes of seeing him on the first day, had I not had an entire day of deep kind of connection to that animal. So that's what I like about it, and it's pretty nice just being able to fill your freezer every year with a bow and arrow. It's a good feeling of self-sufficiency.
Before you said that you hunt 4 seasons, so what are the hunting seasons? Because, you know, if you said bow is, I think you said late August to what, the end of November. What's the other seasons? Does bow season, different game, go to different parts of the year, or is it completely different animals?
Yeah, so I'll clarify my comment that I said I'm outdoors getting after it 4 seasons, not necessarily hunting.
Oh, okay.
But there is almost, I mean, if you're an outdoorsman here, so January, there's predator hunting. So cougars, there's you can hunt cougars with hounds. Again, that's very specialized thing. So you're most likely to do that with an outfitter. There is a boot season early, but then there's varmint control for coyotes and wolves I did a little bit of time trying to pattern and hunt some wolves a couple of seasons ago, and that was just really fascinating. Never actually killed one, but that's all winter basically, and you could probably hunt through till March there. There's also trapping. Took my trapper's certification last year, and that could be an all winter activity. Then April 1st,
what would you be trapping?
All the fur bearers, so beaver on the aquatic side, beaver, muskrat, mink, otter. On the feline side, the bobcats and lynx, and then coyotes and wolves. But my focus would really be wolves, because we've got a bit of a problem with the predator situation here, and a lot of our ungulate populations in the mountain zones have really suffered and have incredibly low recruitment rates. So a lot of the places that I would most like to hunt, there's just really not much there for ungulate game anymore. So trying to put a bit of effort to support the conservation effort for those ungulates by learning to trap wolves is my bigger ambition, but it takes a lot of time and effort.
Do you need a tag for wolves?
Haven't really. Nope. Rack 'em and stack 'em.
Wow. Like, and they're this
if you can,
majestic creature that we picture, pictures on the walls, things like that over here. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
People don't realize, probably if you ask 99 out of 100 people in Calgary, they wouldn't realize that the government of Alberta is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to put helicopters up there and shoot them in northern Alberta. So that there's an issue with them. And that's to protect habitat. That's to protect caribou, which are quite threatened in the province.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, going back to your year-round, so that's your winter. Then spring is spring bear goes from April 1st until either May 15th or June 15th, depending on the zone. So that and depending on the season, April 1st might be a pretty arbitrary date because they're still in their dens. Then there's a bit of a break over summer where there's not much for seasons, but obviously it's busy with shed hunting, fishing, scouting for summer opportunities. Sorry, scouting for fall hunting areas. And then big game seasons open up on August 25th through September 1st, depending on the zone, and then run right to the end of November. And then you've got the predator seasons again. And I'm also a pretty passionate mountaineer and skier, so my winters tend to be pretty full with skiing and climbing mountains. So between that and trying to do a little bit of fly fishing and do some wilderness canoe trips in the summer, it's there's always much more opportunity to be out there than there's time or opportunity to get up.
Yeah, know that. So shed hunting, or what we call casties.
Yep.
I'm kind of, I see the videos of it, and I'm a little, bemused that people put so much effort into going out and, shed hunting, because, the first thing, shed means something completely different. So, but yeah, that seems to be a huge activity, people going out looking for cast antlers and so on. Yeah, it's certainly, some people, like you say, get very passionate about it. There's actually a pretty good market for the antlers. You can sell them. Anything that's naturally cast, and again, it depends on the land designation. Some areas you're not allowed to pick them up, but anything that's naturally cast or dropped, you can sell. So people actually make a living out of it as a way of being out there. But most people just enjoy tracking. If you see the same animal year after year, or if you can find its sheds or casties, as you'd say, and then take that animal at a later date, that's a pretty cool thing to have a set of dropped antlers for that animal. It's actually, some places it's illegal to pick those things up, isn't it? So I saw this thing in the States. They actually had a camera set up in a fake one. Because, they
had a sting. Yeah, I mean, I think
they had a sting. Yeah, like an antler sting.
Entrapment.
The thing to understand is what I was talking about, the provinces here, that's the same in the States, except there's 52 of them. So I don't even start to understand. And I've been looking at hunting down in Montana and Idaho and trying to get my head around their regulations is just like you guys trying to get your head around ours. It's almost starting from scratch. So, I don't know. I know that there are certain areas where they've shut down the shed hunting, and some people get pretty excited about it. But it's always a fun thing to do in the spring as well, depending on whether you're bear hunting or not, but to go out and find shed antlers, and always trying to find brown ones which are freshly cast, and trying to find big ones, of course.
Mm. And what you said, spring bear. I thought bear was off the books, but is there certain types of certain species of bear, or is it certain times of year? So there was an issue about bear hunting, wasn't there?
That's correct, but that's grizzly bears. So we've got two species of bears in Alberta, grizzlies and blacks. Black bear are hyper abundant. In some areas, you can actually take 2 every year, and landowners can kill them at any time if there's a predation issue on their land. So around here, you're allowed to get 1 tag per year, just over the counter. Where I hunt often for spring bears or fall bears, I usually see quite a lot of bears. I don't often take them. I haven't seen many big ones, but it's a fantastic way to get out in the spring. It's a great way to scout elk and deer country. Usually, but having been cooped up in the cold conditions we mentioned earlier all winter, it's pretty awesome to go and sleep on the ground and get behind glass, and you see what's going on. You see the fawns dropping. You might see some shed antlers, and the opportunity to kill a bear, and that's pretty good as well. And then there's different ways you can, the people who are really serious about it and do actually have a high success rate usually bait them. So you can get them coming into a bait, which is a very good way to select a specific bear if you're really trying to target old, large boars. They move so much, it can be pretty tricky to do that when you're just spot and stalk glassing them up. But if you really focus on getting them out of the boreal forest in the north, there's really no way to spot and stalk those, because it's just thick, flat bush. It would be like spot and stalking in the Pilliga or something. It's just it's vast, and there's not much for, probably with less hills than there are in the Pilliga even. So baiting is really the only way to concentrate the bears.
And what's bear like to eat?
I like it. It's closer to pork than anything else, I'd say, which is also a nice change, because I've made the decision to primarily eat what we hunt, and that's what my family subsists on. So it's always nice. And deer, elk, and moose is such lean meat. It's nice to get some geese every now and again, or some bear or something that's a bit of a fattier meat. So I like it. Yeah, it's good. Some people don't like it as much. I think it depends a lot what it's been eating as well. If it's I don't know about those ones that have been baited on rotting beaver carcasses. I haven't eaten one of them. The ones I tend to spot and stalk them in the mountains where they're eating grass and berries.
And they carry is it trichinosis? Is that?
Yeah, just like pork. So you just have to make sure you cook it thoroughly.
That's it, isn't it? That's right.
And and with the meat, you guys have to pack everything out, don't you?
That's right. Yeah. So not only is it in my perspective a moral obligation, it's a legal obligation as well. So you have to make use of all of the meat regardless of where you are. So that comes into the equation where you actually take a shot. I mean, you just can't shoot a moose by yourself 14 k's from the road in August. Unless you got horses, or there's quad access or motorized access that you can get in there. It's you have to be pretty mindful about, can I realistically get this out? And some of the places that I've hunted, I really like to hunt on the edge, I guess, of where you can get to on foot, and it's a major consideration. Even something that's seemingly small as a sheep. Buddy and I killed a bighorn ram little over 30 kilometers from a road a few years ago, and took us 2.5 full days of packing to get back. And when we were eating everything we could, we're eating ram steaks every dinner and lunch, and trying to burn through the supplied food that we'd brought. But when we got back to the truck, our packs were still both over 100 pounds. So that's getting your meat out is a serious consideration. And it helps when it's later season, because it's cold and you can hang it and throw it in some snow or whatever. But if it's warm out, that's definitely a important thing to keep in mind.
And when they say all the meat, so what does that not entail? So what would you leave behind?
I'm pretty thorough about it. Well, let me start by saying from a regulation perspective, Alberta is a little bit vague. Alaska and I think Yukon are very particular, like the meat between the ribs, the neck meat, the shank meat, everything that's not boned. And then for me personally, it really depends where I am and what the animal is. If I'm solo 20 k's from a road, I'm boning everything out and I'm trimming it and I'm bringing all of the meat, but probably not all of the liver, and probably, I might look over the kidneys or the heart or other things. Although I'd probably bring the heart anyway. But for me, I try to bring every last little skerrick, and I've really developed an interest and an enjoyment from utilizing a lot of things, all of the hearts, the tongues, the kidneys and livers, the caul fat, all of the trim. Pick everything over pretty clean because it's just such great meat, and I like to make sausages and jerky, and you can always utilize all that stuff. And the organ meat I really like. I think it's very nutritious for you, and so yeah, it's part of the process for me.
So does organs count as meat, or is that something that technically
you're not forced to take the organ meat? Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
So flesh, basically.
Basically flesh, yeah. And in Alberta, I don't think they would. I think if you left the neck meat and the shank meat, you'd probably be okay. It's a little vague here. It's basically 4 quarters and the back straps and loins.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Though, of course, if that's a moose, that's still a fair 4 quarters back straps and loin. That's still.
Well, you saw the picture there of what a boned out moose looks like.
Yeah. So what would a moose like that weigh once you've quartered it out?
It's always a tricky question because weighing every individual bag and tallying it up is one of those things you kind of forget to do. But I think you'd get it's probably 400 to 500 pounds of weight that you'd have to take out, and then you'd get 300 to 400 pounds of straight meat off it. But I use the bones a lot as well. I really value the bones for their.
Oh, okay, so you're hauling bones out as well.
If I can, yeah. I mean, if I'm so far back that it's a make or break situation, I'll leave the bones. But if I can get them out and it's close enough, then I really like making bone broth and doing bone-in cuts, things like that.
And how much can you get in a pack? Comfortably carry.
Well, depends how young and stupid you are. These days, I think I moderate myself. I mean, I think 100 pounds is a pretty reasonable self-imposed limit. You can just go, or I can just go a lot longer with 100. Once you get over that, it starts to become a lot more uncomfortable, and it might actually be a diminishing return in actually how hard it is to get anywhere. I remember I killed an elk by myself one time, and I ended up having to hike about 8 kilometers back to my truck in the dark, and there'd been it was just snowing all day. So by the time I got back, there was a foot of snow. And I later weighed the pack. It was around 130 pounds. And it was just, I wasn't particularly well trained at that time. I hadn't realized the value of training my knees and really putting in the hard work early season to be able to pack like that. And the effort to just get anywhere. It was down to the point where I was picking a tree 100 yards up the trail and saying, if I can make it to that tree, that's my achievement. And then pick another tree. And that's just, you're deep in the pain cave when you're packing that much. So I try to limit it to around 100 pounds now.
Which is about 35 kilos, isn't it?
No, it's about
40, I think. 40 something.
Well, what, 40's...
It's 2.2 pounds to kilo.
40's 88 pounds, so...
Hey, Siri. How much is 100 pounds in kilos?
44.
45 kilos.
Yeah, 44.
Yeah, 44.
That's a fair pack.
Yeah. I'm having to do that.
That's the other thing about Canada. We're on the metric system, but we're not.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I saw a post. America metric system, Imperial, right? Says the guy that just bought a 9 mil.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that the that one that elk you're talking about? Is that the one that you shot up near where I went with Kevin? I think you shot one up there.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. The one that you had to
exactly.
follow up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, ended up being quite a long. Yeah, it ended up into quite a long experience, but it was pretty. It ended well, and it was pretty deep experience I had with that bull up there in the mountains, and yeah, snowing, solo hunt. I was still rifle hunting at that time. I hadn't taken up bow hunting, but yeah, I ended up having to follow it for quite a few hours before I got a finisher in it, and then packing it out. That first load was probably a little ambitious, but I got it out.
What distance did you cover? What was the pack out distance?
Oh, it ended up being about 8Ks, which was
in the mountains.
Yeah, it was a little unnecessary. I got a bit turned around and then went up over a mountain sort of ended up going away from where I needed to go over the mountain. And then by the time I got back to the river on the other side, I ended up having to do a big loop back around. So anyway, the next day I was able to go back and get the rest of it. It was only 3 or 4, I think, but yeah, I had to put myself through the hard yards to get it out.
Yeah, well, I've been up in there, so I know exactly where you've been, and I'd hate to have to walk out of that with 60 odd kilos on my back. Put it that way. Yeah, that would have been in the snow.
With a foot of snow. Yeah.
So
when you've been up for 12 hours and run out of food and run out of water.
So the other part of this that's always fascinating for the non-resident is how you manage the predators when you've got blood and animals, skins, and all of this stuff everywhere. What's going through your mind at that point? When a lot of this happens at night time, but there's a big long process to break the animal down. How are you managing those bears and wolves?
Yeah, really, really valid point. You got to have your head on a swivel, basically. The bears are the ones who'd be most worried about, particularly if you've seen grizzly sign nearby. I'm not too worried about black bears. Not too worried about wolves. Cougars can be a pretty serious concern. In fact, if you want some story time, that was the closest I came to. One of the closest I came to having a pretty bad dust up in the bushes with a cougar. But yeah, the threat of bears is definitely a consideration. So ideally, you want to get the clean meat off the carcass as quickly as possible. Generally, the gut pile is going to be where they go first. So if you can get the meat off the carcass, then that's by far and away the best thing. And then get it hanging, just to cool down the meat and get it taken care of well, but get it in a visible spot where you can come back to it. And again, it's assuming it's going to be a multiple trip situation. You want to get that meat where it's visible from a long way off, and it's a fair ways from the actual carcass. So I'll often ferry meat away for a little bit and then do my first trip out after that. So, or some people would actually ferry the meat the whole way. So you go 2Ks out, go back, get another load, 2Ks, then camp there, and then go another 2Ks or 5Ks, whatever. So yeah, it's definitely a consideration, and it's something you have to manage quite carefully, because coming back on a kill with a bear on it is well, you're just not getting your meat back, and it is a pretty real concern. I know quite a few people who have had to walk away from their game because of bears, and I had a bit of a hairy situation myself I was guiding up in northern BC, actually an Aussie hunter, and late in the trip we'd killed a pretty nice bull moose, and this bull he'd got two, I think he had 3 cows, and he'd pushed them up into the back of this high alpine basin, and the back of this basin was filled with these 8-foot jack pines, these kind of stunted pines, because they're so high elevation that they can't really grow very big, but they're thick and they're very tough trees, but they're just small because of where they are. Anyway, the moose died in there, so we ended up having to process the whole moose, where it was half suspended in these jack pines, and drug the meat as best we could out onto a spot where we could see it, because we obviously couldn't get the whole moose out in one trip. There was 3 of us. But going back there the next morning, of course, we had seen a grizzly on the way in to that valley, right at the base of that valley. So I was pretty sure there was going to be a bear on it. But we sat there and we fired some shots into the bush around it, and we glassed it for quite a while before we committed to going in there, and then we grabbed that stuff and got out of there real quick. So yeah, you've just got to be cognizant and be aware. But touch wood, I haven't had anything stolen by a bear yet. I did have actually the very first deer I killed in Canada. So I was for myself. I never for the whole first season I was guiding. I never shot anything myself. I was just guiding others. And then my second year in Canada, I bought a gun that summer and bought a rifle and took it out, got it all set up. I was pretty happy with it. Knew an area I was going to go, and there was a general mule deer area back in the mountains. So I did a solo hunt myself, killed this deer, and on the way into where I'd spotted these deer up on the side of a mountain from quite a ways away. I'd seen cougar tracks there in the morning, and I was actually in the morning, it had snowed, and I was following and seeing this cougar it was pretty fascinating. I was tracking it, seeing where it was following some deer around. So I was pretty aware of the fact I was going to have to walk back through that area. And then I went up, long story short, shot that mule deer. It was well and truly dark by the time I got it all packed up and put the whole deer in my backpack. So that was a pretty heavy load with the rifle. And as I came back over my tracks, there was a whole pack of wolves tracks on top of my boot tracks from a couple of hours ago. So there I was trumping along super slowly under this giant meat bait on top of wolf tracks, and then walk right back through where the cougar had been hanging out that morning. So I was a little on edge that evening. I don't think I stopped until I got back to my truck, even though I was absolutely physically dying.
No doubt. Far out. I just can't. I'd love to experience it, and I will experience it one day. But just adding that whole other element to it, we just don't have it here. I mean, the three of us went up the territory not long ago, and we're chasing buffalo and various different things, and we're on the lookout for crocs, but you're not expecting one to jump out of a tree and chew your head off, or run up behind. You stay away from the water. You're good. Probably the next most dangerous thing was potentially a wounded buffalo that's going to stomp you into the dirt because he doesn't like you anymore. We may have got into a couple of situations where that was a potential, but nothing like what you're talking about. And the only wild animal that I've really encountered after shooting an animal in the Australian bush was, I think it was the very first goat I ever shot with my bow when I took up bow hunting. And I was so happy with it. And, from distance, it was the biggest goat in the mob and still ended up being quite small. But by the time we got to it, a goanna had claimed ownership of it. I wasn't having an argument with a goanna, but it probably wasn't going to kill me either. I let him have it. It was fine. We didn't have to account for me, so it's okay.
That's frustrating.
But when you, you're talking about people that come across predators on the carcasses. Is it the same where you are? I've seen it a couple of times. Maybe it's in the US. You've got to account for that meat. You've got to call a ranger or an official to come and inspect what you've brought out. What happens in that situation when you're half an animal down? Are you just taking photos of that bear and saying bugger that, or how do you deal with that rule?
Yeah, the conservation officers are never going to challenge you for not fighting off a bear to get your meat out. You just have to report that, and they would be like, yeah, don't go anywhere near it. We'll give you a new tag.
Oh really?
Go on your way. Yeah.
Really?
Usually, if there's an issue like that where you've done the right thing, and you didn't get your meat, they'll give you a new tag. Depends on the situation, of course, but I've heard that happen quite commonly. And I know if people have had to shoot cougars, and alluding to that, I had a situation where I had a pretty scary situation with a cougar that was actually hunting me. And I was bow hunting, and he snuck right up on me and a friend. We were calling elk, and we were about to just walk 5 yards in front of where he was, and he was in a full crouch position on the side of the trail, about to
pounce,
have a go at us. And I thought carefully about shooting it, but I would have had to go through a whole rigmarole with, getting conservation officers in there, giving statements. Who knows how that could have gone? So there is that thing in the back of your mind as well. And the same with bears. If I mean, look, if a bear was coming for me, I would have no hesitation about killing it if it was him or her against me. But you definitely don't want to take that lightly, because it's going to be a court case, and there's going to be, it's going to make your life pretty unpleasant for a while.
And are you carrying
Especially if it's
a pistol or anything like that for the bears, or?
Well, don't get me started on our political situation here, but no. Pistols, recently some changes have been made. So I do have a restricted, what they call it, an RPAL, which is a restricted license. So I'm licensed to have a pistol, but you can only use them in designated ranges. So the only way you can carry one in the bush is if you're a licensed trapper and you get a special dispensation, and then it can only be when you're on the trap line. So no. So when I'm when I'm bow hunting, bear spray. And sometimes that's it. Sometimes I know there was an area where I was hunting moose where there was a very high grizzly population, and I was bow hunting moose, and I backpacked in, and I actually packed a rifle in with me, specifically because I knew if I killed a moose there, and I found a moose, and I didn't end up getting him, but if I had have killed that moose, getting back near him I would have been very anxious to get the meat out of there, and I wouldn't have gone near it without a rifle. So.
And the authorities are okay with you taking a rifle in during bow hunting season, or is this you just taking a self-preservation chance here?
It depends. Yeah, I mean, there's yes and no, depending on the land designation, the time of year. Some land designations, so like wildland provincial parks, you're allowed to carry a rifle during any big game hunting season when you have a tag. So I had a black bear tag. The season is open for black bears. It wasn't hunting for black bears, but by having a black bear tag, that allowed me to carry a rifle in that area just to make it all above board. And there's a bit of a code of the West that if you're on horseback and you have a rifle with you, it's all good type of thing. So I think I've got away with it a few times where I've packed a rifle and someone said something to me, but haven't thrown the book at me, fortunately. So yeah, it's pretty amenable, but I really, really wish I could carry a sidearm because, I was just listening to a story. There was a local guy here from Calgary who had a horrific experience where he fought off a sow grizzly bear a couple of years ago, and his whole face torn off, literally. He fought that bear, and if he had have had a pistol on his hip or a chest holster, he would have been able to save himself a lot more than he was able to in the end. So it would be nice, particularly for bow hunting, but unfortunately that's not available to us.
One of those big ring Marlins in 45-7 in a short barrel.
Yep. Honestly, and I have the shortest legal, technically a rifle. It's called a Rossi Ranch Hand, and it's about 20 inches overall length. It's got a sawn off butt and a 16-inch barrel. Yeah. And it's the lightest and smallest firearm that's still considered a long gun. So I can pack that on the side of my pack, and I can draw it out the back. So, and on horse you can have it in a scabbard there. So that's what I pack with me. And I've had to point it at I finished off a couple of black bears with it, and I've had to point it at a grizzly bear who decided, fortunately, that I was on horseback. I had, let's see, 2 pack horses and then a hunting client on a saddle horse. And we're in thick willows up in northern BC, and this big old boar grizzly came just charging down the trail towards us. So I couldn't go back because there's 4 horses backed up there. And fortunately, the horse didn't freak out, and I just squared up and had that little 45 ranch hand pointed at him and come on in, bud. It's you or me. There's not much you can do about it.
I'm not sure if I missed that. Are you still guiding?
I'm not anymore. I mean, I still get the odd opportunity. For a while there, I came back and was working in a corporate career, and I would just take my vacations and guide part-time up in northern BC generally, or sometimes here in Alberta. But I haven't done that for a number of years just because time is scarce, and I try to get out for myself as much as possible. Yeah. And when you spend the fall guiding, then your chances to hunt for yourself is actually pretty slim. A lot of the really full-time guides barely ever hunt for themselves. So it's great that you're out there, but there's pros and cons.
Fair enough. I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
You gonna tell us about that sheep?
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear about that sheep.
So that's an 11.5-year-old bighorn ram. He's about an eighth of an inch shy of Ben and Crockett record book ram. He's the second ram.
Did you say 1/8 of an inch?
Yeah. I thought he was book ram for sure, but not that it matters a skerrick to me. But just for reference, yeah, he's 179, I think, and something B and C. Yeah, I mean, he's just a beautiful old ram. The probability of a ram living beyond 11 years diminishes very rapidly, and for a ram to reach 12 or 13, a bighorn ram to reach 12 or 13 years in Alberta is in the single digit percentage rate. So a great one to take. It was last day of the season, 2016, up in a steep mountain area. Very, very cold snow. I remember we actually just did that in a day hunt. A lot of my sheep hunts are weeks long, but that one was a day hunt, and so we set off in the dark from the trailhead, and it's just me and one other buddy. It's just a straight up grind trail to get up out of the tree line into the alpine. And I actually spotted that ram pretty early in the morning, and it's a relatively well-known spot, so there were a few other people hunting on the mountain. And as soon as I saw that ram from a distance, I could actually see his turn him so you can kind of, I could see from the other side. So he was like this, and I could see his offside horn pointing up above his nose.
Yeah, like that.
So I knew it was just a huge full curl ram. And the rule here is you can buy a sheep tag every year over the counter, but in order to take one, they have to be what they call 4/5, which is basically an imaginary line from the front base of the horn through the front of the eye, and then the horn tip has to pass through that imaginary line. So he's just, you don't even need to look twice. It was just so far beyond that, and you could see from 1,000 yards away the mass that he carried, that he was a huge old ram. And even his body, as soon as I it's just a little dot, but as soon as I put binoculars on him, you could see that he was something pretty special. But as soon as I saw him, he went back over a ridge, and there was a couple of other hunters in the basin between where I was and where he was. I thought, well, so much for that. That was pretty cool to have seen that, but there's no way I'll ever get a look at him. And I think it was probably, we sat down to have a drink of water and just kind of survey the scene. We'd seen a few other ewes and lambs, and another younger ram, actually a pretty decent ram that I had passed up, and some other hunters had gone after. So we were watching them go, and then I saw this ram come around the side of the mountain, and he just picked his way through the rocks and actually bedded down on a far ridge line. And I thought, holy smokes, this ram is bedded down. That's actually, we might be able to get there. There were some other hunters between. We probably had an hour head start on where we were if they had have just hustled after it, and they didn't seem to be doing anything. So I thought, you know what, let's just go and see what happens. And those hunters either hadn't seen him or thought he was too far. I don't know. But so we just beelined down off the mountain that we were on, because he was the next mountain over, and it was deep snow. I remember climbing up. There was a big snowy slope to get up to the ridge that we were going to get behind the mountain and get up to the top, and then circle around on top of him. Because you probably, much like hunting goats, you want to come down from above, regardless of wind or anything else. If you can get above a sheep, that's a much better position to be shooting down on him than shooting up from underneath. And then we started trudging up that slope, and we were taking turns to break trail. It had a wind crust on the snow, so you'd step up on it and then you'd break through, and then you'd step up on it and break through, and it's around knee deep and very steep and pretty thin air. It was 2,500 meters, something like that. So you start to notice that a little bit, and we were taking turns to break trail and counting our steps. I'm gonna go for 30 steps before I stop. And we just beelined, and we were so in the tank, because we had we had hiked up the mountain in the morning, and then in order to get across to where he was just going to be a mission. So we'd scarfed a little bit of food, but we were way undernourished and way underhydrated, but just went for it. And then, long story short, got up on top of the back of the mountain, climbed up through the rocks, which is another fair way, and it was just a beautiful alpine day. Just blue sky, snow, rocks, freezing cold, perfect late October day in Alberta, and we snuck over the ridge, snuck through some rocks, looked over, and there's that ram laying there 200 yards away, bedded up, looking out over his mountain terrain. So yeah, I snuck the rifle up over a rock and shot him where he lay, and he ended up slipping off and catapulting about 500 meters down the mountain at terrifying speed, but ended up down in a creek, and we went down. We had to avoid some avalanche risk to get down to him in a safe way. But yeah, it was just a incredible thing, and that I very much doubt I will ever have an opportunity on a ram like that again. So I'm mostly bow hunting or trying to help mentor other hunters and friends onto the sheep hunting these days, because I didn't need to just kill one all the time. And maybe if the opportunity comes and it feels right and I'm in the right situation, I'll take another ram. But that one is pretty damn special. So very lucky.
Mm-hmm. Unreal.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, dude, I think we're going to end it on that story. Thank you very much for that. Thanks very much for joining us on the podcast. I know we've been talking about it, getting you on for some time, so I really appreciate you joining us and giving us some of your, the history of, hunting in Australia, and also your adventures in Canada, because for us that's, it's something we'd all love to do at some point, and it seems so out of reach. By the sounds of it, it might not be if you know the right people or if you're prepared to part with the cash. But yeah, thanks very much for that. It was really enjoyable.
Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure. It's fun to chat with you guys, and I've enjoyed listening to some of your episodes. It takes me back to the hunting down there on state forests, and Jonathan, of course, we had some good times. I enjoyed seeing those pictures from hunting goats at Mudgee back all that time ago. So yeah, it was a fun conversation.
Next time you're over, we'll have to go back down there and have a reunion.
That sounds fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, mate. Really appreciate it.
The world, Jono.
What's that, mate?
I said we'll take that party to the other side of the world. It's a better idea.
Yeah. No, hit me up. It'd be fun. I still haven't actually hunter hosted anyone because so I've got that available.
Well, if we do one every 3 years, it'll only take 9 years for us to all go and hunt Canada. So
might have drawn another moose tag by then. We'll see.
Oh, very good. That's awesome. Oh, I really appreciate it, mate. It's been a great chat. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. You're interesting, Mudgee. There's certainly goats there. I went through there in February, and there's certainly a lot of goats through there.
Yeah, there's some rough country there. There was a lot back in the day, and I haven't been there for many years, so I imagine there's a lot more now.
Is the hut still there? Sorry, I've got to keep going, but is the hut still there?
It sure is, yeah. My brother's going there next week, I think. So, it's still there, solid as ever. So
it's an awesome place. So Louis' family have got a hut there in Mudgee, and it's got a very special place in my heart because it's where I first hunted in Australia, and it's an awesome place. And I was really appreciative that you shared that with me because I know it's a special place for you and your family. So yeah, really that was like one of the highlights of that trip for sure.
Yeah, no, that little 12 by 20 tin structure is the greatest gift I was ever given by my parents, because go there as kids and we'd just be in the bush, and that's how I learnt a lot of appreciating and observation, and it's been pretty formative part of my life. So yeah, it's a pleasure to share it with you, Jonathan.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to end it there. So thanks very much, Louis. Really appreciate it.
All the best. Yeah,
cool.
Thanks, guys.
See you, mate.
See you later, mate.